What is up? You are listening to the Christian Board Gamers Podcast, proud members of the Love Thy Nerd Podcast Network, and man, do we have a surprise for y'all. Well, I guess it's not a surprise now because you probably read it in the title, but it was a surprise when you didn't know the title, and now you do. We are so excited. We have Shem Phillips from Garphill Games joining us. Man, he talks about his faith journey, he talks about his board game design process, what they got out ahead. This is a really rich interview. We thoroughly enjoyed it, had a great time with him, and it was just all around a great experience, really personable dude. So again, if you know any of Shem's games, if you're a fan of Architects of the West Kingdom or Raiders of the North Sea or Ezra and Nehemiah, man, tune in because this is just a really fun interview. You're going to get a lot of really cool insight from him. So really, really excited about it. And Ray, as always, we know by God's grace, we have sponsors for this show. So let's hear them.
Man, thank God for these sponsors.
Yes.
This is fantastic, man. Yeah, our longest running sponsor we have is Refocus Creative. Hey, Chris Bowden, who is the owner and creative director of Refocus Creative LLC, he has been doing this for over 12 years. He is actually a national award-winning videographer and editor. Man, so when you go with him, you're going to get some expertise that you will not get in other places. They can do all kind of services like video editing, marketing, photography to capture and improve a client's present and future business needs. If you need on-site coverage or a church service, commercials, television spots, they do it all. So please, please, please go check out refocuscreative.com. If I could just get that right, Joe, that'd be great. I'm going to do that again. Refocuscreative.com. I'm going to enunciate. Yes.
Yes.
All right. And as I mentioned before, we now have another sponsor, and this is fantastic. We are happy to be partnered and sponsored by Camp Living Waters. This is the camp where we have our Game Changer retreats and our Game Changer family retreats in Luther, Michigan. And Camp Living Waters is sponsoring us. Man, check them out. If you guys have a men's retreat, a women's retreat, a youth retreat, you can do it all there. They have a beautiful campus there where you can go hiking, biking, enjoying nature, having wonderful worship services, and the food is always amazing. So please check out camplivingwaters.org for all your needs. Just get on the website, look around, and maybe there's somewhere where you need to get away and enjoy God's peaceful atmosphere. So thank you to our sponsors.
Yeah, let's go. Love Camp Living Waters. And I received a text just today that literally said, hey, I was at this camp retreat, blah, blah, blah. And the bottom line of it was their food was nothing like Camp Living Waters. Camp Living Waters brings the heat when it comes to the food. So good. But I love that they shared it. They were recently at the Family Game Changer retreat. They're like, the food was so good. And they're like, we're at this other camp, nowhere near as good. And so it was awesome. So I love that. But hey, we're rambling, we're bambling, we're doing all that stuff. We want to get you to the interview. So Matt, cue that music.
Welcome to the Christian Board Gamers Podcast, where we focus on Jesus, community, and board games. Let's have some fun.
We are super stoked to have the one and only Shem Phillips of Garphill Games joining us today. Shem, we are honored that you are willing to take the time to sit down with us. How are you doing this fine day?
I am doing great. It's an honor to be here, so thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, no, we're super stoked. Like I said, just blessed to have you here. It's definitely awesome. It is 11:30 a.m. where you are, 5:30 where we are, so that's definitely wild. We do a lot of time traveling on this show as we get to talk to people all over. And so
Joe loves time travel.
What's that?
I said Joe loves time travel.
I love time travel. Anytime I can time travel, it's great. So I'm all for it and definitely in it. But yeah, thanks again for being here. Super blessing. For those of you who don't know who Shem is, he is the owner of Garphill Games and pretty much a jack of all trades. Hopefully I have this right here, Shem, that you designer, developer, publisher, marketer, so on, kind of just taking it all on. And Garphill Games is known for games like Architects of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, and recently Ezra and Nehemiah. And Shem, we don't want to waste any time here. We like to jump right into it. And being that this is the Christian Board Gamers Podcast, we really want to start our interviews off with hearing people's stories, right? How has Jesus impacted your life? When did you come to Christ? A little bit of your testimony. So if you don't mind, we'd actually love to start there and hear a bit of that testimony if you could.
Sure, just jump straight on in.
Yeah.
All right, sit back. So born and raised in New Zealand, Kiwi, and I was raised in a great Christian family, very much a family that talked about Jesus constantly and always at church, always having people around for meals, things like that. So very much a family-focused Christian family. And I think I was about four or five when I kind of started to think about it more seriously, I guess, as much as a 4 or 5-year-old can, but made that kind of, I guess, that public kind of, declaration of faith. But it wasn't really till I was more, I think I was about 9 when I decided I want to be baptized. Like I'd seen other kind of young adults or teenagers in our church getting baptized and thought, what is this about? And from memory, I think I asked my mum, "Can I be baptized?" I was like 8. She's kind of like, "Well, maybe let's wait a bit longer till that's really what you're doing. It's not just a ritual; it's something you actually believe in and know what you're doing." So, and then a year later, I was just like, "Oh, I want to get baptized." So she said, "All right, let's do it then." So I think I was 9. So that was, I guess, a good starter for me. Like I was raised on all the stories, understanding who Christ was, what he's done for us, and then just naturally went into this path of like, well, I believe this and I want to live by this way. So
Amen to that.
I went through the usual teenage years, as most teenagers do. Never really fell away, but was very lukewarm and that kind of stuff, as a lot of teenagers are. But I went through a lot of stuff sort of in my early teens. So when I was 13, my dad died in a tragic accident. So that took us from this nice, very happy kind of Christian family and good, positive and nothing crazy going on in our lives kind of environment to suddenly like, whoa, our world's been stripped apart. So that was a massive shock, as you can imagine, for our whole family.
Yeah.
So my mum then raised 2 teenage boys on her own as a challenge it would have been for her. But it was through that kind of process that I realized like I need to rely on God for myself, and really understand who he is as a father, as a provider. Even though all those things were brutal and hard and, tough to go through, I know that like I've really had to draw on him more than I would have with my father. So, and of course I don't know life any other way. So it's kind of like you take the blows and you walk through, but knowing how much God has been there for me through the whole process is carried on throughout my life. So, even as I've gone into business and things like that and game design and all that kind of stuff, that kind of core understanding of his provision and of his father heart for me has just kind of been with me my whole life. So
Wow.
that's a nutshell kind of snapshot, I guess, of the early years at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, yeah, thanks for your transparency and sharing that with us. Ray, it looks like you had like a follow-up, like something was percolating.
No, I was just thinking of how beautiful that story is, man. I'm always amazed when I hear people at such a young age who just have an understanding of Christ and the significance of what it means to really invite Christ as your savior. And so to hear that from you, I just think that's beautiful, because I was somebody who didn't come to Christ until being older. I was still raised in, a house. We have my testimony somewhere, but really submitting my life to Christ at a later time in life. And so to hear you at such a young age, and even your mom saying, "Hey, let's hold off just so you know what's going on," and you still being like, "No, I want Jesus, man. I want Jesus." That's awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Love that. Cool.
Yeah. I love that. That's a beautiful story. Wonderful. Well, let's transition a little bit from that testimony and then hear how you started in the board gaming. What was your initial inspiration to start designing games, and what led you down that path?
So I think I was in my early 20s. I grew up playing in bands and things, like lots of music in my life. So as a creative person by nature, I like making stuff. So I hear a band I like, I'm like, oh, can I make my own music? So I did. I like t-shirts, can I make my own t-shirts? So always that kind of thing of trying to replicate what I like creatively. So would have been my early 20s. I had grown up playing card games and board games, just the classic kind of stuff you find on the toy shelves. And I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe I can make a board game for myself, just out of fun. So I set off on this journey to make this little game. It was a very simple family kind of style game, tile laying, very luck dependent. Definitely not a game that you should go out and try and find. But that kind of set me on that path of like, well, I made a game, I self-published it had no ambitions of making a second game or becoming a company or anything like that. I just want to make a game for fun, and it was fun. And then after I made that one game, I thought, well, can I make another game? And then I think it was like a whole year of just me trying to design a game. It was a small kind of rummy style card game I made. And then I think each year I'd be like, oh, can I make one more? Can I make one more game? And I just made these like 20 to 50 kind of print runs, homemade kind of jobs, very basic, very much a boutique kind of outfit. Did that for about 5 or 6 years. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then when Kickstarter opened up for New Zealanders, that's when I put my first game, Shipwrights, on Kickstarter. And actually at that point, I was kind of considering like, this might just be the last game I make. It's been a fun hobby, but I might do something different now. Because I wasn't really like selling that many games. It was purely for enjoyment. But it was a lot of work. So at some point you kind of go, well, is the work worth the kind of the feedback you get? So, but yeah, putting that game on Kickstarter, got a big response, like way bigger than I expected. I thought I was going to print like 500 copies and then maybe sell 200 and then have 300 that just don't sell. That was kind of my ambition going into it. And then I think it was like 1,300 copies of that first Kickstarter. Which by today's standards isn't huge, but then I was just like blown away and thought, wow, people actually want these games. And from there, it was like another 3 or 4 years of me going, this could be a thing. Like this could actually become a business or something serious. So I kind of just built it from there.
Wow.
And as you mentioned earlier, like I kind of just do everything because I've always had to. And then as we've now grown, I've now been able to recruit people who are far better than me at other things and get them to do the jobs that I shouldn't be doing, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't realize that Shipwrights was your first Kickstarter game. So, okay. Yeah. No, I have both, the first one there, Shipwrights, and then I also have the Redux. And so I'm going to ask this was not on my list of things to ask, but now I'm curious. So like with Shipwrights, like, were you just not satisfied with the game in general? And because I read a little bit and you're just like, okay, I want to, bring this up to par. Is that what really drove the Redux? Or was it just like, okay, yeah, that was my first kind of Kickstarter thing, and I know I can make it better. Like, what was the thought process there?
I think most of it was that those comments that always niggled away from, especially YouTube reviewers, where it's like they'd start talking about like the next games, it might be Paladins, it might be Viscounts, and they'll always go back to like, so from the north, Raiders was great, Explorers was and then they would say Shipwrights was just rubbish. Like they'd always like kind of every review would bring it up.
Wow.
And like you kind of get sick of hearing it. You're like,
sure.
Can do better. So, but that game was very much like designed at a point where I didn't know what I was doing at all. I was just trying to make games for fun, and that game got play tested like crazy with one group of people that learned the game.
Okay.
So I never had official play testers and any kind of support group like would have now for a company. So it was just a passion project that, on hindsight, looking back, like, there's so much I would change. Sure. And that's why I did Redux, because I wanted to change it so much.
And they're like completely different games. I mean, they're like so different. But I actually really enjoyed the original Shipwrights. I did not think it was garbage. I felt it was actually a pretty accessible game that I could sit down and introduce people into your gaming style. So it's still a game that I can use that, that and usually Architects, I feel like I can sit people down, teach them relatively quickly, and then they can kind of get a little bit of a feel and flavor for your design and your style. Go ahead, Ray.
So with Shipwrights, did you have that already before the Kickstarter came out? Like that was a game that you created, you were playing, and then you were like, hey, I think this one is good enough. Let me throw it on the Kickstarter and see what it does.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, I had this game with about Viking longships. I had no artwork done. And I knew it would cost a lot of money to make all these cards. So I kind of finished the game at that point and didn't know how to produce it, because my previous method was like, I'll just print the cards locally. I'll get these blank boxes and put a sticker on them. Everything was done kind of homebrew in New Zealand. So I couldn't make that game with that kind of technique. So it just sat there for like a year. And I kept designing other little games. And then when Kickstarter came, I was like, oh, now I could actually potentially do this game. Wow. I had dabbled once before that with another game using a Chinese factory for the first time. So Shipwrights was the second time I'd gone overseas to manufacture. So but that was, otherwise it wasn't possible to make that game.
Yeah, love it. That's so good.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, it's probably going to get a little bit obvious the more we go here. I'm a little bit of a fanboy. You are actually my favorite designer in the space, so that's why I was saying I'm pretty stoked that you're here talking with us. I know that's why I was like, all right, Joe, stay composed. It's okay, just stay composed. But no, seriously though, like I love your designs. I think you really do some very unique things in the space. I think you're always pressing the bounds a little bit, and so your games always have some unique resource management and worker placement mechanics. Like what draws you to these design elements? Like, I am curious to know your process in and through that, because like I said, I think you've come up with some really creative ways to use these types of mechanics, and always engaging, and I'm always kind of excited to see what you're putting together. So what's drawing you to these things? How are you coming up with this stuff?
Well, excuse me. Early on, I did most of the games were like mechanisms first. So I'd just go, well, what's a cool way of using cards, or what's a cool new way of using tiles, or whatever it might be, and just try and think up something fresh mechanically. And most of my first 10 years of game design were probably from that angle. Okay. Only until we started doing these trilogies, like once we kind of committed to doing we finished the North basically, and like, let's do a West Kingdom. That's when I was like, oh, we need themes. Like we know the setting already. We know it's like medieval France basically, and what's the game going to be about? What's the story going to be about? So we had these kind of like very tight restrictions, not tight, but like thematically, at least setting wise, to try and design a game in, which was a much different challenge, much harder challenge in a way for me. So yeah, early on, basically like try and find a cool mechanism and then try and build a game around that was my usual approach, which is why probably those games are generally lighter, probably more accessible, like you were saying with shipwrights. So I'm very much about like simplicity as a thing in my life. So even in my game design, you'll notice that like most of my solo game designs, like just me involved, are generally simpler. Maybe a few cool mechanisms and nothing much else. But then when I co-design with Sam McDonald, who loves big, heavy games and like involved games, lots of intertwining mechanisms, we tend to just go crazy. So when I try and pull him back, he tries to push me out, and we find a nice middle ground. But yeah, that's a big part of it is co-design too. So like our more recent games, it's a far different process, because we'll spend like potentially a few months just spitballing ideas and seeing what sticks, and then trying out little things, go, no, that's rubbish, throw that out, try again. So we're doing that for like the East trilogy right now. Yeah. Got all these ideas, things to try out. Some things are okay, some things aren't, and we'll just try and eventually find a game in there, in that mess somewhere. But that's the usual process now, is just trying something, thinking about something fresh, and then just tweaking it, like starting out very small and then building. Whereas some designers will start with like the full grand scheme of everything and whittle away it to find the right thing. I very much like try and start small and build up from there. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. It's interesting. The only one of your games so far that I've played that really, or actually I didn't even get through it, was Scholars. It jacked me up with all the colors and stuff. I got so lost in that. I was having fun. I was like, we literally were sitting down. This is true story. We're sitting down with a friend of mine. I was at a board gaming retreat. We sat down, we unpacked it. We were eager to play. We set it up and we get everything. We're learning it. And both of us looked at each other and we said this out loud, verbally said, Shem, what are you thinking? And we just started cracking up because, man, that game, I got lost in all the colors. I love Wayfarers. So I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And I'm excited to play Inventors. But yeah, I've just always been amazed at how unique your games are, even within the same, trilogy set. You always have something really cool, whether that be a creative way to do deck building or resource management, worker placement. And so I'm always looking forward to what you're putting out, just because it's going to have some really cool, unique, different design elements. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing your process.
Thanks. Yeah, we definitely try and innovate when we can.
Yeah.
So both Sam and I have that kind of mentality of like, let's try to do something fresh. It's not just redo something we've done before or someone else has done before.
Yeah.
Which is a challenge, because if you innovate, it generally involves making new systems, which means more rules, which means more complexity and harder to get into. So you find a game that doesn't innovate too much, but maybe has some nice little twist. It means it's quite easy to get into and it's familiar, which is good. So like Raiders of the North Seas, like that, it's not groundbreaking, but it has one little twist, which is enough to kind of go, oh, that's cool. Yeah. And then it's not overwhelming. Whereas with the South Tigers, especially, like we had to try and think up 3 games that use dice in a new way. or at least in a fresh way.
Yeah.
Which was a big challenge, but and it means more rules,
Yeah.
more complexity, and it kind of ramped it up for that trilogy.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Well, I love rules.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I'd grab that rule book and jump right in.
And he's not even kidding. Ray is like literally like when we're learning games, Ray is glued to the rule book. There is like he's always in it. So that's real.
I just want to make sure we're playing right. I want to know all the caveats to what's going on here and all the little things that maybe somebody missed when they taught me. So, yeah. So your processes, man, you have a lot going on in your games. They're intricate. You have some great designs, amazing games, different mechanics. Out of all of that, what is the hardest aspect for you, the most challenging of designing a game?
Good question. I think for me personally as a designer, it's probably interaction is the hardest part. I naturally design more of a puzzle style game. That's my happy place. Like I can make simple little card games, quite easily. Not to sound arrogant, but small tile line games are kind of like my happy place to make it sound nicer. So anything that's like resource management, action selection type stuff, I like doing, and I'm quite comfortable designing in that space. But when you start bringing in interaction and how other players affect each other and how that scales and how that affects the economy of the game, that's where I'm like, well, this is not my comfort zone. Fortunately, Sam McDonald loves that stuff, so we can complement a bit, and we learn off each other in different ways, so that definitely helps. But anytime that it's like a game's far more interactive, I'm a little bit out of my depth, and I'm trying to learn new things and approach it, because I used to be very much a Care Bear in gaming. Didn't like people taking my stuff, especially in a Eurogame, and I'm slowly trying to just get out of that frame a little bit to try and there needs to be some interaction. It doesn't have to be all negative, but some positive interaction as well.
Yeah. Well, interaction, it's definitely difficult. I mean, I unashamedly say I love Ameritrash. I mean, I'm all into negative or positive interaction. I always enjoy that interaction between players, regardless. So love that. Ray, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have a follow up?
No, I was just going to say the interaction is great. Just kind of piggyback, especially for what we do here and what we talk about in the podcast of the fellowship, right? Because interaction is going to bring more fellowship and opportunities to talk and just navigate some things that maybe wouldn't come up if you guys were just not having that same interaction. But yeah, that's it.
Well said. No, cool. So now I know y'all don't center on biblically themed games, with Ezra and Nehemiah being an exception here. We can talk more about that game here in a second. But with that though, and we're tying this kind of into your faith a little bit, have you ever received or faced challenges in the board gaming industry because of your Christian faith? Is this something that comes up? Especially when you maybe released Ezra and Nehemiah, where people may be asking more questions, because it kind of felt like that game sort of came a little bit out of left field. I know I got really excited when you had announced it, and it was like, oh, wow, as far as in your historical line and all that kind of stuff. But is that generating questions? Have you ever really come up against it where somebody's, giving you a hard time for this, or any issues that you might have had?
Never anything extreme, I guess.
Sure.
So it's been generally positive. And the response to Ezra and Nehemiah has been overwhelmingly positive, really. So there was a few BG posts early on, sort of very much kind of passive aggressive kind of questioning about the motivations behind the game, or hey, how historical was this game, or what are your sources, that kind of stuff. So there's a bit of that. But no, I guess I've always been quite open that I'm a Christian. I don't go out preaching through our company quite intentionally, but I'm not going to say I'm not and shy away from it if someone asks. So and I think that's the view of most of everyone at Garphill that is a Christian. It's very much we're Christians as individuals. We try and, I guess, represent Christ in our daily life as much as we can, which means through the company we work for. But we would share occasionally a Merry Christmas post or something, and we won't shy away from saying the word Christmas rather than just Happy Holidays, things like that. So we're not going out there and shoving in people's faces, but we're also not going to try and hide anything. So
No, and that makes sense. So, like, again, just kind of leaning in on Ezra and Nehemiah, how did that come about? What was the process? Like, I mean, I'm assuming y'all were just sitting down and you're like, oh, Ezra and Nehemiah, that seems like a cool game, or was like, what was the, you know what I mean? What's the intention behind that, and how did you guys come to that as the one you wanted to put out?
So we have our ancient anthology line, which we started, whatever it was, maybe 4 or 5 years ago with Rays of Scythia,
Yep.
and then Hadrian's Wall and Legacy of You and so on. So I definitely had that in my mind. They're like, you could do a biblical kind of setting for a game because, it's historical. As much as people might disagree with that on how accurate the accounts are, but I had previously tried to design a game called Nehemiah, which is probably like 10 years ago now, I think.
Oh, wow.
Is probably just after shipwrights. I was trying to work on a game called Nehemiah about rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. And then as I was just starting that project, well, I'd never read a game at all, but it's kind of working. Another game got announced called Nehemiah. I was like, oh, someone's already jumped and grabbed the theme. Because it's a cool theme because it's about building things, which is, it's quite rare in the Bible stories that humans are actually achieving something noteworthy. Usually it's about doing the wrong thing. So it was like, that's a cool theme. I want to use it at some point. And then when we were thinking about the next ancient anthology game after Legacy of You, I kind of said to Sam McDonald, like, oh, maybe we should do Ezra Nehemiah, like do that setting again. And we just did one big day of brainstorming of getting all the thematic things we wanted to tie in.
Yeah.
And we basically let ourselves copy ourselves was the kind of, we don't usually do that. But like, we had this thought that because the game is very much set on a story of the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the temple and everything else, it's probably going to be not that replayable. Like then we just kind of went into like that kind of thought, like it's probably going to be a scenario feeling game. You played a few times and you've seen the game and that's it. But that's fine because, hey, it's cool. It's about Ezra and Nehemiah. So we went into it with that kind of attitude. And we thought, well, if it's going to be a game like that, let's just make it the best possible game we can. And we'll use stuff that we've done before, but in fresh ways. We're going to make it kind of a little bit like Viscounts, a little bit like Paladins, add some Raiders stuff in there, and just make a really solid game and let ourselves kind of steal from ourselves, which we wouldn't usually do. That was the intention. But then we were actually so surprised. The first prototype was actually pretty good, which usually that's not the case for us. Usually it's absolute trash. We have to go back and start again. It was generally pretty good. And then as we developed it, we were like, actually, this game is really replayable. Like, this is not a scenario game. This is actually pretty solid game. We got really into it and really enjoyed it and pretty happy with the final product overall.
Same. Yeah.
Yep.
We love we love it, man. It's definitely, we actually we recorded an episode that's going to release right before this one last night actually, and we did a play shelf trade and Ezra and Nehemiah was on it and we both were like, shelf hands down, like that's not going anywhere. So we try and break it out whenever we can, man. That's a boat ton of fun. So yeah, no, cool. Sure. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Great job with that one.
Yes.
Great job with that one.
Cheers. Yeah, we wanted to also just go, there's not that many great games that are like a biblical setting or story at least, that are also great games. So we want to tick that box. Like, let's make like a great game that Christians and Jews and everyone else can enjoy.
Yeah.
And it's true to the theme. It's not cheesy and it's also not trash, the game. So
nailed it.
That was the mission.
Yeah.
So good.
Definitely did.
So good.
In line with that, are there any other biblical stories that you would be interested in possibly making a game out of or looking into in the future?
I have a few on my list. I don't know if we'd ever do like straight up biblical, or like we wouldn't do the Israelites again, I guess is probably the way to say it.
Sure.
Because we're trying to do different civs for this line of games. But who knows? We could do other lines, I guess. But there are lots of adjacent stories I quite like the Queen of Sheba. Even a game, we haven't announced it yet, so I won't spoil it. But one of the games we're working on now has a lot of ties to biblical stories. It's not about the Israelites at all, but there's a few Old Testament books you can read about this particular race and what they did. And so it's quite cool, just like seeing the tie-ins and things. But I don't know, maybe we'll do more in the future. We have no idea how many games will be in this series. It's just going to be our main series for a long time, I think. So we may wrap around and do some more about the Israelites or about, I don't know, the Moabites or someone completely, very adjacent or something, but we'll see.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, love that.
I'm sure it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Well, it was funny because when you said like usually our first prototypes are trash, I'm like, I would love to play a first prototype and just see what you mean by that. Because, yeah, I don't know. We might have different definitions of trash, but either way, I've always enjoyed the final product. So sweet. So, all right. So we talk about this a lot in our podcast. We really want to equip believers to be able to use board games in the space of discipleship and evangelism, because we're sitting down at the table, right? Like this is an inviting space. We're able to sit down with just about anyone. People might not accept a church invite, but they're willing to come to your home for dinner and a game, right? There's just ways to engage your community through board gaming, and we really do seek to tie this in and really help equip and empower people to be able to use board gaming as a tool just because of its the relational space that it provides, and again, sitting down at the table. So this question, it's a little bit open-ended, can kind of go anywhere, and you might even get it and be like, well, I don't know, whatever. But what are some ways that you think Christians can use board gaming to build community and even share the gospel?
I think the obvious one is just running a game group, right? That's the clear one.
Sure.
Like you already said, basically it's an opening into your home, forging friendships. That's the ultimate goal, right? Is to have relationship with people, to be able to be open enough to share with people and stuff like that. So I don't know. I used to run a few groups. My church would run, I guess they're like a home group, or they did all sorts of like different types of groups. I think they called them life groups or connect groups or something back in the day. So I did Monday night tabletop for a few terms, whereas about 15 people would come around on a Monday night and just play some games. With that kind of open, it's like this is a Christian event basically, but you can bring in whoever you want. So, but yeah, that was just good for relationship building, really. It wasn't an outreach as such, but it was still a good thing just to have for that, building that community of the church and things like that. So I think it's also like another cool thing about the board games is it appeals to that geek kind of culture, which gets, especially in my teenage years, was kind of overlooked.
Sure.
Maybe not so much these days. I think it's more accepted now, but the kids that would be like the ones, going goth or going into the heavy metal or whatever, they were ones that usually got kind of overlooked, I guess, by the church in a way, especially through the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing just to have a space where people who might be the outcasts, I guess, have a safe place they can come and enjoy something a bit nerdy without feeling like it's like a bad thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's, with Love Thy Nerd, that's really what they're seeking to do, right? Show the love of Jesus to nerds and nerd culture. And so, again, stepping into those spaces that they maybe had felt alienated or just a little bit separate, like you said, the outcasts. And so being able to use something like board gaming as a tool. But yeah, I mean, it's such a relational thing, and I love that. And so even when we talk about sharing the gospel, like Ray and I would talk about this a lot, where it's like, this is the long game, right? Like, I think sometimes we feel like, oh, we've had you over our house 3 times. Now we have to sit you down with our PowerPoint and walk you through the gospel. And really, that's not it. This is just about life on life, doing life with people, engaging, being in their mess, and even inviting them into yours, right? And then allowing that to open up these conversations, and just how powerful board gaming can be, just as a tool to even just get people to sit down at the table and just engage. So yeah, so I love that. And I share it because you as a designer, like, that's a real thing. I mean, I don't know how much you think about it, but again, you're providing a fun space for people to be able to sit down at a table. And so, like, I've dabbled in design. That's not why we're talking here. But the reality being is that, like, I think about that when I play somebody's game. It's like they spent the time, the hours, like, committed to making this thing that's good so that we can actually sit down at the table and have fun together. And I just think that's fantastic, right? Like, you're literally dedicating, and now obviously this is a business. There's no hiding that, but it's like you're dedicating your life to creating fun spaces for people to be able to sit down, hang out together, and build relationships. And so you're becoming part of people's memories in that regard. And I just think that's a really super cool overlooked aspect of the board gaming industry, where it's like these people are really like sitting down creating this thing so we can have fun together. And I love that. I just think it's super cool. So
yeah, it's a real good reminder. I mean, like our games, other than Israel and Nehemiah, are not like they're not Christian games, I guess, as such. They're about Vikings and pillages and all sorts, and lots of warfare, lots of nasty stuff. But it's my hope is that, like, despite us not making these preachy kind of things, I guess you could say,
Sure.
we're making something that people can enjoy, and hopefully will be my hope that the Holy Spirit will work through, the cardboard and the dice and the
Right.
relationships that build and stuff through that stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm very much a believer of like the, we're designed to create, designed to work. That's what we're designed to do in worship. So like we just do it. The content might not be necessarily biblical or
Sure.
anything like that, but as long as it's not exalting anything else, it's hopefully something that God can use. So
Yeah.
you can use a donkey, you can use my board games.
Right. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Yeah. That's so good.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I like that. That's a quote. We're gonna put that on there. If he can use a donkey, he can use my board game. That's we're gonna put that. I'm putting that on my wall behind me
Yeah,
somewhere.
Yeah.
Love that. What advice would you give to aspiring Christian board gamers or any board game designer at all? What are some tips that you have for them? Because you are very successful over the last like 10 years. You've been designing games. You can do card games in your sleep. We want to hear some of that good knowledge that you have.
I think I've always said like the biggest thing for me at least is like playing lots of games. If you want to design games, you have to play games. I've heard other designers say the complete opposite, but I think you need to see what's going on out there. You need to be inspired and learn from other designers before you, stand on their shoulders, that kind of thing. So the big part was just playing games, and then you start to analyze them, right? You start to think of through like, why did they make those decisions as a designer? Like, why is that rule there? Is it necessary? And that's the stuff you kind of start to do as a designer, is break apart the rules of the game, and you start to learn like little systems, like little tricks. I guess they're like, oh, that's how that designer fixed that thing. We talk about a lot now on our Lens of Our podcast about like dissecting a game to kind of figure out like what were they thinking in the process, because a lot of times you play a game, you're like, that thing's dumb. Why is that thing in the game? But if you step back and actually think about it, you're like, oh, I kind of see why it's there. Like, it's kind of necessary. And there's so many different ways to fix a problem in a game. But, so it's just fun to see how other people do it, I guess, is the kind of important takeaway. Like, because I don't always, like, have the solution, but other people may have solved that problem in a previous game, and you can kind of learn from them and that kind of thing. But just
That's
play
good.
games, play lots of games, and just have fun making games. Like, don't go into every game with the ambition to publish it necessarily. Just try and make a game for your friends to enjoy. And if it's really good, then cool. Otherwise, move on and make another game and see if your friends like that one, and just keep making games for the fun of it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get too wound up with the industry side of things, and they want to release their game straight away, their first game. And, my first games were absolute trash. So I made like rubbish games for a long time. Fortunately, no one really played them. They're just very much under the radar, but, I kind of learned on the job. But, you see some people pop out now with this massive, big mega hit as their first game. It's just bizarre.
Yeah.
It's so odd, but don't be afraid just to make some rubbish games for fun first and then learn from them.
Yeah.
That's
Love
great.
that. Love that. Sweet. All right, cool. So I don't know how much liberty you have to share in this, but is there any exciting upcoming projects or expansions or anything that you guys are looking forward to in the coming 6 months, year, whatever?
Yeah. So our next, we just finished a Kickstarter campaign for the 3 or 4 South Tigris expansions. That kind of wrapped up the South Tigris for us.
Yeah.
And then we have just delivered, or just started to deliver actually, the Anarchy and Scar of Bray. So there are now numbers 5 and 6 in the Ancient Anthology line. So the Anarchy is like a mechanical sequel to Hadrian's Wall, designed by Bobby Hill. Scar of Bray is one of my designs, which has some similar DNA to Legacy of You and Shipwright's Redux. It's in that kind of space. And then probably around May, June, we plan to launch another Kickstarter for the next game in that line called Assyria. It's a second edition.
Okay.
It's an older game from 2009, designed by Emanuele Ornella, an Italian designer. We've been working with him to redesign the game for like the modern market, I guess you could say. So lots of development changes. The art's all done by my brother, Shem Phillips. So that's we've shown the cover, we've shown like a layout of the game, but we'll start promoting that over the next few weeks and stuff. And then who knows, we might have a secret project to announce later this year too. We've been working quietly on a couple of things that have nothing to do with our other lines. So we'll
right.
see. We'll see what we show off later on.
Okay. I think you know if you have it coming. So
Oh,
yeah. No, that's awesome. That's what's up. Oh, we hit.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something, Ray. Sorry. We try not.
no.
We try desperately not to interrupt one another in the podcast, and sometimes you get those awkward silences. So.
Yeah, maybe
That's
we
so
should.
hard, eh?
Maybe we should just start interrupting each other all the time.
yeah,
Yeah, this is how it works.
No, it's good. So we'll get into a few fun questions here as we kind of get close to wrapping up the time, and this has actually been great. But if I were to ask you, and I know sometimes this can be a tough question, it might be the hardest question you get this entire time, but what is your personal favorite board game, either one of your own or another's design?
It's an easy question.
Oh, okay.
I actually started keeping a list for the last 3 or 4 years of my. I started top 100, then I went top 50. I think I'm like top 30 now because
Okay.
it's just too hard to judge games outside that.
Sure.
Pandemic was my top game for a long time.
Okay.
Still, I love that game to bits.
Yeah.
My top now is Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Yeah.
It's just like it's a game I would have published in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So
Let's go.
Fantastic game.
That's one of
I love
Ray's.
that
That's
game
what I was
too.
gonna say. That's one of Ray's favorites. So
Good taste.
Yeah.
yeah. And Pandemic, man. Those are
Yes,
I was gonna say.
great.
Yeah. Cool.
I need to come to your monthly game nights, man. We need to hang out, man.
Yeah.
I love the games you
How do
put
you
out.
shuffle
I
it?
love the games you play. So yeah,
Just a quick jaunt down to New Zealand. You'll be all right.
I
Like-
always wanted to go down there. Yeah, I love Kiwis. So yeah. All right.
That's what's up.
I think we got time for another one. What do you enjoy doing outside of designing and playing games?
Spending time with family, obviously. Got to put that one in there, right?
Yeah,
But no,
right.
my other kind of hobby, I guess, is Lego. So I love building Lego.
Awesome.
But also quite like dabbling with designing sets. So we're actually soon to release. I've designed these little like micro scale builds of each ancient game. So I've done like one for Scythia and one for Legacy of You and so on.
Wow.
Just real small little micro scale builds. So
Sweet.
I'm waiting for the approval on them, but they will be available to download for free from Bricklink, I think it's called,
Oh, wow.
at some point soon. So
Oh,
I just
sweet.
love like just fun designing these little Lego builds. So at like a micro scale. But
That's awesome,
that's
man.
my
You're just
other
a
joy in life.
creator through and through, a creator on
Can't
all
help it.
levels.
Yeah. This is,
if I knew I could draw,
well, your brother got all that. Yeah.
Yeah, he got all that.
He got all that. No, that's awesome. Well, hey, Shem, this has been great. Where can people find you? We want to make sure that people have access, and that way, where can they go for what you're doing?
best place is just garphill.com. There's links to all of our social medias and to our Discord server and all that kind of stuff in that one place. Pretty easy.
Done. Super simple. We'll have the link for everybody there in the description so you can check out Shem's games. Man, this has been a pleasure, honestly. Actually, I'm going to throw it on to you now because usually we want to leave this with some profound thought. So anything, it can be anything. Is there any piece of wisdom that you want to give out, right? If you were like, man, if I just had one shot to drop some level of wisdom, this is it. So any profound anything that you would want to share with the listening audience?
Did you just say Ray or me just then?
No, that's you. I'm putting
Ray,
you
all
on the. Yeah. Oh no, Ray gets a pass. He only gets the pass when we have people
right.
being interviewed. So
Oh man, at first I was like, oh no. I thought you say Ray. I was like, oh yes. No. Oh man.
I know it's a lot of
words
pressure.
Wisdom. It's a hard one. I don't know. What's one? Well, if I could remember it. No, that's gone from me. I'll just say, love others. That's
Yeah.
the big thing, right? Like
Amen.
I think the biggest kind of battle or the biggest problem with society today is selfishness. So that's the thing that needs to get broken down. So live not for yourself, but for other people. That's my my thing, my takeaway.
love it. Yeah, perfect. See, there you go. That's profound, and
you
it
go.
works. Yeah, that and if God can use a donkey, He can use my board games. So.
Yeah, just quoted myself.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. Yes, awesome. Well, hey, Shem, thank you so much. And as always, we want to leave y'all with Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and glorify our Father who is in heaven. Until the next time, y'all, God bless. Peace.